Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram
जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी Jayo Krishna Balaram, Jayo Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jayo Krishna Balaram. Jayo Nittai Gauranga, Jayo Nittai Gauranga, Nittai Gauranga, Jayo Nittai Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, 24th chapter, text number 62. Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yashasthitavare Sakrut, Yashasthitavare Sakrut, Shrotanjilair Upashprushya, Shrotanjalir Upashprushya, Dhunute Karma Vasanam, Dhunute Karma Vasanam. Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yashasthitavare Sukrut, Shrotanjalir Upashprushya, Dhunute Karma Vasanam. Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yashasthitavare Sakrat, Shrotanjalir Upashprushya, Dhunute Karma Vasanam. Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yashasthitavare Sakrat, Shrotanjalir Upashprushya, Dhunute Karma Vasanam. Yasmin Satkarna Piyushe, Yashasthitavare Sakrat, Shrotanjalir Upashprushya, Dhunute Karma Vasanam. Word to word translation. Please repeat after me. Yasmin. In the history of the transcendental activities of Krishna upon the surface of the earth, Sat Karna Piyushe, who pleases the demands of the transcendental purified ears. Yashasthirtavare, keeping oneself in the best of holy places by hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Sakrat, once only, immediately. Shrotra Anjalihi, in the form of hearing the transcendental message. Upasprushya, touching exactly like the water of the Ganges. Dhunute, destroys. Karma vasanam, the strong desires for fruitive activities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Simply by receiving the glories of the Lord, purified through purified transcendental years, the devotees of the Lord are immediately freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. Purport. When the devotees orally receive the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as enacted in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they immediately achieve a transcendental vision in which they are no longer interested in material activities. Thus they achieve freedom from the material world. For sense gratification, practically everyone is engaged in materialistic activities which prolong the process of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, birth, death, old age and disease. But the devotee, simply by hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and further relishing the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam, becomes so pure that he no longer takes interest in materialistic activities. At the moment, devotees in Western countries are being attracted by Krishna consciousness and becoming uninterested in materialistic activities. And therefore, people are trying to oppose this movement. But they cannot possibly check this movement or stop the activities of the devotees in Europe and America by their artificial impositions. Here the words Srotanjilir Upasprushya indicate that simply by hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord, the devotees become so pure that they are immediately immune to the contamination of materialistic fruitive activities. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Materialistic activities are unnecessary for the soul, and therefore the devotees are freed from such activities. The devotees are situated in liberation, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, and therefore they cannot be called back to their material homes and materialistic activities. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yenam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachar Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pasyata Deshatarine Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gauravaktaranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Simply by receiving the glories of the Lord through purified transcendental years, the devotees of the Lord are immediately freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. So it's very interesting to see some specific words in this verse. Sat Karna Piyushe, who pleases the demands of the transcendental purified years. So the glories of the Lord, the different pastimes of the Lord, these are actually something that we want to hear. See, it is quite manifest in this material world, right? So if you if you see what is it that people are interested in, what do they spend their time in this world, right? If you were to objectively look at that, an average person, and let's just take this country for example, just to get some sense. How do you think they spend their 24 hours? Majority goes in sleeping, huh? Wish they were sleeping that much, then they wouldn't have so many problems. The reality is, they think that they are trying to sleep, but they really cannot even get sleep, proper sleep. Anyway, working, huh? Okay, working is one part, but what else? Social media. Yeah, like there used to be a time when they used to do a study that an average American spends like 4 to 6 hours watching TV every day. And those were the days when TV was the only source of this thing, right? That's why when I think we all first came to this country, I was shocked with the number of channels that are there on the TV, this thing, right? I remember back in when I was I think I was in high school at that time. TV, middle school or something, TV first came. Right? We were all used to Doordarshan. One channel. With specific times of the day, everybody would be up waiting every week for that small episode of whatever. Right? And then Star, anybody remembers? Star, I think, right? Star TV came. That was the first exposure of Indians to this cable TV or whatever, that kind of this thing, right? And so 5 channels or something. It was mind blowing. 5 channels. And after that, thankfully, I joined the temple, so I don't know anything after that. I'm sure in India also you go now, there must be like hundreds of channels. But why are there so many channels? And what are people watching? I heard that there are many of the housewives in India, right, who don't really like go to work or something. Their life is centered around watching serials. When you cook, it depends on which channel is coming, which this thing is coming. And, when you eat, like everything is planned around, these things. And hours and hours are spent, watching those soap operas, right? Different, these things, oh, this person did this, and that person did that. And there'll be twists and turns in the stories, like, the eagerness to hear is a transcendental, inseparable nature of the soul. That is the reality. Like in this verse is telling, it pleases the demands of the transcendental purified ears. The ears are demanding, I want to hear, I want to hear, I want to hear. Now that demand of I want to hear is being replaced with I want to hear these materialistic things. And the reason for hearing those materialistic things is because the nature of this conditioned life itself is we want to imitate the Supreme Lord. Right? When anybody is watching those serials, everybody is thinking they are the hero or the heroine. Like nobody is thinking that you are a side character over there. There are so many side characters. They are all there, that whatever happens to them, a little forgotten immediately. Because their focus is, I am this. Because the true hero is Krishna, and the true heroine is the Lord's own internal potency. Right? exemplified by Srimati Radharani. And the because you see, ultimately, that's why like time has to be spent. Whether, in fact, whether here in the material world or in the spiritual world. We'll talk a little bit about the difference in the spiritual world. But here in the material world, time is very powerful factor. Mysteriously and mystically, everybody is busy. It's not that everybody is busy in different kinds of busyness, right? That is driven by, these things. You would think, this many of these richer households, in the traditional times in India, they wouldn't even go out to work or something. Right? They would just stay at home, and this thing, and not even that they are working. They have so many servants who are actually doing the work. Like, what are they doing? Right? Sitting and watching, things, and gossiping and talking. It takes different forms, right? And even men, for that matter, what do men indulge their time in? They are also sitting and watching sports. They are hearing this thing, that happened, this happened, this person did this, and they'll go and interview this. What was your childhood? What was that? Like, so much we are this thing. So that eagerness has to be transcendentally satisfied by hearing the pastimes of Krishna. And when we hear those pastimes of the Lord, immediately what happens? It says, Sakrit. Just once only, immediately. Right? It is compared to Yashas Tirtha Vare, like Tirthas. We all Tirtha Karmanti Tirthani. Right? So you go into Tirthas, holy places. Yashas Tirtha Vare, Shrotanjali. What does this do? Upasprishya, touching, dhunute, it destroys. So we see in the different pastimes of the Lord and as associates, with this eagerness to hearing is manifest. And also we should understand this and try to intersperse this into our lives so that if our ears are filled with the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, then there is no time or place for nonsense to enter in. Otherwise, time, mysteriously, it will be used and nonsense will enter in and we will become interested. Right? People have eagerness to watch news. Like, we'll see little older people, they'll start their day newspaper. Whole day they're sitting and reading newspaper. Same thing, same news, same people. But they're so eager to watch and then they watch TV news. Many times same news is coming again and again. And then they just same. The eagerness is the same, right? But we should understand that it has to be met in different ways. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his pastimes he exhibited this eagerness to hear the pastimes of the Lord. There are several devotees who are quite several devotees with whom the Lord spent Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exchanging and hearing the pastimes. Right? It will be good to remember some of them and what we understand from that. Anybody remembers any of the devotees Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spend time with? Ramananda Raya is also, so the Ramananda Samvad that happens on the banks of Godavari, right? That is a very good example. Before Ramananda Raya actually gave up his duties as, in this government position and went and joined the Lord's, as the Lord's companion. So there's a lot of discussion that happens of the different pastimes of the Lord. And then the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very eager to hear that. And then he talks about, okay, what is higher and higher, and the discussion over that. What else? Anybody else? Yeah, the Goswamis, definitely there was a lot of instructions given to the Goswamis, and there were discussions of particular aspects. Vakreshwara Pandit is another very famous, he's a very famous dancer, right? And he's known for his dancing, and is also known for his dramas, actually. Vakreshwar Pandit used to perform wonderful dramas for the pleasure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that was very pleasing. That was very pleasing to the Lord. There was also Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit was known for his recitation of the Bhagavatam. And the Lord would spend many, many hours sitting and hearing the recitation of Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. And there were other particular texts that was very pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, other than the Bhagavatam. Anybody remembers? Yeah. Gita Govinda and Krishna Karnamrita. Right? Jayadeva's Gita Govinda was something that he always wanted to hear. Krishna Karnamrita was typically recited by Sarvabhauma Swarup Damodar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's assistant, his main secretary. And Gita Govinda, Ramananda Raya is known for that recitation of the Gita Govinda with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would very, very eagerly, listen and participate in these things. So we see that Srila Prabhupada also, based on this, you can see the different ways in which Prabhupada wanted us to engage in the glories of the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to participate in watching dramas. Like we talked about Vakreshwar Pandit, also Ramananda Rai. Ramananda Rai wrote a beautiful drama, and he would perform that, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would very, very eagerly watch those things. And very similarly, Srila Prabhupada instituted this practice of, making and participating and doing dramas. Because you see what happens, there are different ways, because we need variety. We need, to hear stories and all that. And then, reading something there is pleasure in reading something, hearing something, watching something. But there is so much more pleasure in actually performing it. Right? The person who is performing, they themselves are immersed in the mood of that particular devotee and thinking about that. And the people who are watching are seeing, and they are immersed in that this thing. So these are all meant to be ways in which we can purify ourselves, purify the heart, and purify the yearning of the transcendental years by touching the pastimes of the Lord. Right? And so that's why we see right from the beginning, Srila Prabhupada used to encourage a lot of devotees to bring up performances. So we see both in Los Angeles, when they started that in the Vatsayaka Avenue Temple, they used to perform dramas over there. In Bhaktivedanta Manor, even if you go now, there was one room, a little bigger room. They converted it into a small theater. So it's like, think of it like, because the whole manor was a house, right? And so one of the bigger rooms where I think it's like a family room, living room kind of a situation. And they devotees, they created steps. And so there was a sitting place. It's not very big, maybe as big as Damodar room, maybe even smaller than that. And so they created the reason was every weekend devotees used to perform dramas. Like just like we have temple program, there is this class, there is this, just like that. Every weekend is to have a performances, and there was an assigned service for devotees to do that. So it's again very pleasurable to do that, and we should figure out ways of how do we learn this and how do we practice that. Now, what other means of hearing? When you think about different ways of hearing, any other things come to mind? Somebody is telling from inside the altar. Some Harikatha. Transcendental, yeah, all the different transcendental pastimes. So, see, there is very formal reading, just like Nityam Bhagavata Seva, yeah. Right? Every day, we all have a very formal reading of a verse of the Bhagavatam. In Prabhupada's times, there was a very set process of like formal hearing, like this. Anybody knows what are the standard? Huh? Yeah, morning there used to be Bhagavatam class. Evening there used to have Bhagavad Gita class. It is almost a standard practice. So morning you listen to Bhagavatam, and then you go have prasadam, and then you go around, do your services and all that. Evening you come back. When you come back, go take a bath and this thing, and then Gaur Arti, and then listen to Bhagavad Gita. You listen to a Bhagavad Gita class, you do some kirtans and eat, nice, go to sleep. Huh? And listen to the Krishna book and then go to sleep. Right? So these two formal classes used to be there. That was one formal thing. Now there are other informal means of like keeping ourselves immersed in the pastimes of the Lord. Right? Now, this formal reading also, see, reading is one thing. You will, or listening to a class is one thing. How do you keep yourself immersed in the glories of the Lord? Yes. ISKCON sandwich. Huh? Right? The ISKCON sandwich. Morning Bhagavatam and evening this thing. Morning and evening program. And then in between you can go do things, service. Right? That's why we keep saying, we should have some kind of a sandwich program. Otherwise what happens, especially evening, is very dangerous time. The modes of nature are in tamoguna is permeating. If you do not spend time, at least little bit hearing this thing, that thing, mind can get deviated, and then so much of human energy is wasted in useless things. So one should be very careful. So this the other part is, how do you remember the different activities of the Lord? That is why when we interact with devotees or when we meet with people or something, how can we take lessons from the different pastimes of the Lord? There's another way to remember. If you're going through some situation or going through something, say, okay, what did Prabhupada do in this situation? Or what have other acharyas done? Are there any particular instances from Chaitanya Charitamrita or Bhagavatam that we can learn lessons from? Right? Recently, we all have been hearing about, Maryada Purushottama Rama and how Lord Ramachandra's ideal behavior in different situations. Right? So these are ways in which one can learn, and it could be from the Lord's pastimes or the devotees of the Lord. How did they behave? Right? When we hear about Draupadi's dealings with Ashwathama after he kills all her children. Can you imagine all the children of Draupadi were killed by Ashwatthama when they were sleeping, right? When they could not even defend themselves. Because if they were awake, any one of them would have defeated Ashwatthama with ease. But her interaction with Ashwatthama, in pardoning him, these are different lessons to be learned from that. Right? So like this, when we go through different situations in life, how can we connect? And among interaction among devotees, always bringing in some Krishna Katha in some form of other, it helps alleviate our different material challenges and miseries and the inabilities of the material world associated with interactions with each other. Right? So that is another form of actually internalizing and remembering these things. And then we talked about like actual for enacting dramas and different things like that. Now, what is the effect of this supposed to be? So if you read about this, it is saying they become immediately freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. So this change has to happen in our lives. Right? Prabhupada is talking about that simply by hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and further relishing the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam becomes so pure that he no longer takes interest in material activities. We see that truly manifest in the life of the different principal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramananda Raya was a big governor, and he had big governmental responsibilities, but he gave that up and took to joining Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri and spending his time with him. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami are another wonderful examples. Right? They were the principal ministers of Nabab, and they gave up that. So ultimately, it has to manifest in losing interest in material activities. Unless, so Prabhupada is telling over here, materialistic activities are unnecessary for the soul. Therefore, the devotees are freed from such activities. Anya abhilashita shunyam. Now, unless one engages in very ardent hearing, which will translate into developing a desire to engage in spiritual activities. Till then, our entanglement in fruitive activities. So what happens? Strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. Fruitive activities where we are looking for some result. I do this, I'm going to get this. And the result is what drives us, to think. And it's a perpetually we keep going after. Oh, this is going to give me happiness. That is going to give me happiness. This forever eternal dangling of the fruit. Prabhupada is to give the example of how you take a horse or a donkey. Right? How do you make it work hard? Right? Huh? They will tie a little grass in a bag. If you've seen that, I've actually physically seen this. And then they put it on the neck of this thing. And then, the donkey is trying to get at those little grass. He gets a little grass because, when it's going up and down, a little grass will come. Oh, so nice, so nice. And Prabhupada is telling, you look outside, everywhere there is grass. Right? And that is why you see, sometimes they put these blinders for horses. You see? They cannot see beyond, like some distance because they're just focused on just going front. So like that, Maya has, has entangled us, has enamored us with very little happiness, so-called little drops of happiness. This materialist happiness is compared to like drops of water in a desert. When the drops of water fall in the desert sand is so hot, it falls and it just immediately vaporizes. And that little bit, our quest for happiness is like that. Little bit of material happiness we get, and then, and we just get so entangled by that little piece of happiness. Just like the donkey is seeing that, eating that grass. Yes, grass is pleasurable to eat. But the reality is, if you are not running behind this materialist activities, grass is everywhere. The true pleasure for the Atma is in hearing the chanting and glories of the Lord and chanting the names of the Lord. These are the things that really give pleasure to the Atma. And that is so freely and easily available. Doesn't require any money, doesn't require any elaborate arrangement. We can get it anytime. And we have the ability to get it. We don't need anybody else also to get it. But our mind, gets so entangled in these different activities that we are not able to. So that is why there is so much stress given on seeing whether our activities are resulting in the intended impact. Because if the intended impact is not happening, then something is wrong with our adoption of the process. Over time, if you're not getting freed from strong material desires, if you're not giving up engagement in fruitive activities, it means that we are stagnating. We are not, we are missing the essence of spiritual life. And so one has to be very introspective in trying to understand whether we are properly applying these principles. So to summarize, the hearing of the Lord's activities are very, very pleasurable, and we should fill our lives with ways of hearing this. And if we don't hear the glories of the Lord, we'll end up having a desire to hear material activities and material things. And so we can do either formal hearing, like we said, classes and all that, or we could, participate in discussing the pastimes of the Lord and the Lord's associates and the Lord's devotees, or take part in enjoying, performances in the form of dramas and music and drama and things like that. Okay. So we'll stop here. Anybody's any questions or comments? Yes. Yeah, so you're saying there seems to be a chicken egg problem here. And if our ears are not purified, how can we hear? And if you don't hear, how will we get purified? Right? It's a very good question. See, the reality is that when your ears are transcendently purified, then they're going to demand for hearing Krishna's four lips. Today, our demand is not for hearing the Krishna's four lips. Right? So our demand is for, we want to be engaged in materialistic activities. So the way out of this conundrum is to create situations and create a lifestyle where we are initially doing this as a regimented thing. That is the nature. All sattvic happiness is like that. It feels like, oh, so difficult, I can't read one page. Right? You take a book, read 3 lines and you'll get nice sleep. You can't get sleep otherwise. Just write the book, you just eyes are closing on this thing. Right? That is the nature of this world. But you take the book out, you can't sleep. Right? So that is why we regiment it, like the sandwich program. Make sure that you have a Bible class. End the day with some kind of reading. Either read the Krishna book or Prabhupada's pastime, something. Have a regimented process. Then slowly the other interests will develop. That is why when you're taking notes, remembering a theme for the week. Right? We sometimes keep talking about this. Something you should remember, okay, what is it that is special today that I read? What is the theme? Just keeping on thinking about it. And when we get opportunities, that's what we all want to talk. We all want to hear. So that exchanges should be, done. Then automatically, the process of doing it will purify us. And then they'll reach a stage. That is why we say in the 9 stages of devotional service, the anartha nivritti stage is a difficult stage. As soon as you go past the anartha nivritti stage, what is awaiting us? Asakti. Right? Will be interest, a lot of, just like this, utsuka, will be waiting to hear that. And then, as Prabhupada, Madhapada Prabhu said in the morning, that we have to develop that greed for hearing. Otherwise, we cannot get Krishna. So, that is the process. Right now, we may not be manifesting that. But if we are constantly looking for, eagerness will automatically come by putting Krishna into our ears. We'll end here. Srimad Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. बोल प्रेमानंदे।